The villagers called this the certainty monster. Chapter 4, the beast that should not be fed. The more you feed certainty, the hungrier it becomes. There's an old legend that's told in forgotten villages, tucked between the mountains and the forests. It speaks of a creature that nobody could ever see clearly. Not because it was really good at hiding, but because it never stopped growing. I like to call it the certainty monster. At first, it's no larger than like a rabbit. Then it's softly knocking at your door. I'm only a little hungry, it would say. Just one answer. And the people would happily oblige. Knock, knock, knock. When you do something like go and check if the door is locked, the monster smiles. Thank you, it says, and for a little while, it feels satisfied. But later that evening, it would return. Would you check again? So they did, and as they did, the monster grew. By the next morning, it would return once more. What if the lock didn't catch this time? So again, you check. Another check, another meal, another inch taller. Soon, the monster has made its way all around to all of the villages. It asks endless questions. Like, are you sure? Did you remember? What if you missed something? What if I made a mistake? The more villagers answered the questions, the bigger the monster grew. People stopped sleeping, they stopped laughing, they stopped smiling, and they eventually stopped leaving their homes. It felt like every hour was spent feeding the monster. Until one evening, an old herbalist strolled into town with a lantern and a kettle. Oh, and a walking stick. The walking stick is a good visual. She listened patiently to the villagers, and then she asked quietly, when was the last time the monster became full? The villagers, you know what they did? They grew silent. No one could remember. And that's when the herbalist smiled, because you cannot feed something whose appetite is certainty. The next morning when the monster would knock, nobody argued, nobody answered. Nobody even chased it away. Nobody tried to convince it otherwise or to do anything. They simply carried on with their day, and every time the monster roared or got upset, even start pleading or threatening that terrible things would happen. Problematic behavior, girly. Still, the villagers kept themselves calm, tended to their gardens, made tea, went for walks together, even watched the sunset, and each day, the monster became a little bit smaller. And this isn't because anyone was defeating it and fighting it and beating it up into submission, but because nobody was feeding it anymore. If you are like me and you struggle with obsessive thinking, there's a really good chance that your brain is searching for certainty. You might not have called it that before. Maybe you've called it being careful, double checking, or just wanting to make sure. But underneath many of our mental loops is one secret little wish. I just want to know for sure. And that, my friend, is deeply human. Our brains love certainty because certainty feels safe. And sometimes when we know what will happen, our nervous systems can relax, especially if we are hypervigilant with something like PTSD. The challenge is truly that life never offers us any sort of guarantees. Relationships aren't certain, health isn't certain, the weather isn't certain, and the future is most certainly not certain. Even our memory isn't perfectly certain either. Can't trust that baddie anymore, it feels like. Yet our minds treat uncertainty like it's danger itself. So they search, and they review, and they replay, and they reloop. Maybe Google, analyze, ask for reassurance. And this isn't because we are weak, but because our brain believes that it will find certainty and that will create safety or bring us peace. The problem is certainty rarely lasts. So let's try the relief loop. Imagine you leave a house. Halfway down the street, the thought appears, did I lock the door? You return home, check the lock, it's locked, relief. But that relief only lasts a few minutes, doesn't it? And then another thought appears. What if I didn't check it carefully enough? So you go back and notice what happens. Checking reduces your anxiety. So the next time it appears, it'll encourage you to check again because it gave you relief last time. Not because the door was less secure, but because checking it was associated with relief, like last time. Over time, that cycle begins to strengthen until the relief becomes shorter, the urge becomes louder, and not because we're failing, but because our brains are learning and trying to figure it out. Now, peace isn't the same as certainty. Here's one of the biggest ideas in this entire course. Peace and certainty are not the same thing. Many people spend many years and sometimes their entire lives trying to become certain before they allow themselves to experience any sort of peace. But what if it was a reversed order? What if peace became possible even while some questions remain unanswered? Mindfulness doesn't promise us certainty of any sort. It offers us something different, though. The ability to meet uncertainty without wanting to immediately erase it. This doesn't mean uncertainty is going to feel pleasant either. It means we'll slowly find ways on how to survive it. And with a little bit of practice, our nervous systems will begin to learn that uncertainty isn't an emergency and we can be a chill, cool girly. It is possible. So here's some everyday examples. A parent sends a text message to their teenager. No reply all day. And their mind whispers something must be wrong. Or someone notices they have a new body ache and they spend 2.5 hours of their day Googling symptoms online. Or your new friend ends a conversation with, "We'll talk later." Your mind begins immediately writing those ghost stories. "Oh my God, are they upset with me? What did I do?" In each of these moments, the urge is totally understandable, right? We want certainty because uncertainty feels incredibly uncomfortable. But notice the invitation. It's not to eliminate uncertainty, but to practice staying present even when it exists. One of the biggest words in mindfulness that we can use sometimes is not the word always. It isn't the word never either, but the word maybe. Maybe everything will be okay. Maybe this uncomfortable feeling will pass. Maybe my mind is just telling that frightening story again. Maybe I don't need the answer right now. Maybe I just need some water. Maybe helps us create space. And that space gives us a little bit of freedom to choose how to react. So this is the maybe practice. This week, choose one harmless uncertainty in your life. Perhaps it's resisting to check the weather one last time before you leave the house, or sending that text without rereading it 10 million times. Although sometimes I really just need it because I still have the typos, but I don't see it. Yay, dyslexia. When your mind starts to demand that certainty, respond with maybe. Not to dismiss your thoughts, but to remind yourself that you don't have to solve every uncertainty. And notice what happens, not just to your thoughts, but to your body. Here's a few reflection questions to ask yourself this week. What kind of certainty does your mind search for most often? How do you usually try to create certainty? Does it bring lasting peace or only temporary relief? And how does it feel to start practicing maybe? Like actually practicing it though, so give it a try and then come back to that one. What do you think would become possible in your life if you didn't have to solve every question before trying to live your life? So carry this with you this week. Listen for when your voice tells you to check one more time. Instead of answering it immediately, take one gentle breath. And remember that certainty isn't the price of a meaningful life. And sometimes maybe can just be enough.